Dear Chosen One, today I must speak directly to the depths of your soul, because you have been sensing something that few can even put into words. You feel the resistance in the air, the weight of invisible eyes watching you, the strange way in which doors seem to close when you try to step fully into who you are. This is not coincidence, and it is not a sign of weakness. It is proof that your presence is disturbing a system that has always thrived on control, deception, and shadows. You are not simply living your life. You are carrying authority in the government of God, and that reality shakes the very foundations of every assembly that was built in darkness. You were never meant to blend in, Chosen One. You were meant to govern from a higher order, and that frightens every force that depends on keeping the world in chains. You see, the reason they rise against you is not because you are powerless, but because you are powerful in a way they cannot touch. The assemblies of shadows are real, and though they may look like people, institutions, or hidden voices around you, they are driven by something much deeper. They fear what you represent. They fear that your leadership is incorruptible. They fear that you cannot be bought, silenced, or manipulated because your authority does not come from them. It comes from heaven itself. And so they gather, they vote, they conspire, hoping to convince you that you are small, that you are isolated, that you are rejected. But even in their plotting, they reveal the truth. They only fight what they cannot control, and that is why you are targeted. Before we go deeper, I want to ask you something very important. If this message is already speaking to your heart, let this moment be a declaration. Type in the comments, "I stand in God's government." 2. That is your seal, your public affirmation that you know who you are and where you belong. And while you do that, make sure you leave a like on this video, because it tells me you are walking with me on this journey, and subscribe to this channel so you never miss what is being revealed for the chosen ones. What I am about to share will not just explain why you have been opposed, but it will open your eyes to see that every vote against you was already cancelled by the decree of the one who called you. Stay with me, because what you are about to understand will shift the way you see yourself forever. You see the machinery at work, and it is subtler than you imagined, Chosen One. There are committees of influence that meet in rooms you will never enter, and there are conversations held in whispers designed to reduce your identity to rumor. These gatherings are not only political, they are energetic agreements crafted by those who profit from control. Their fear precise and practiced. When you begin to act with integrity, when your words refuse to be shaped by bribes or the pressure to please the powerful, you become an immediate threat to systems built on compliance. Remember this: power that can be bought is predictable, but power given by God is neither predictable nor purchasable. That is why assemblies form against you, not to reason with you, but to neutralize you, to make you small enough to dismiss. Your awareness of the terrain gives you the advantage to walk through it with eyes open, steady, and wise. Sometimes the opposition wears human faces, and this is the cruelest part of your journey. A friend may suddenly grow distant, a partner may turn cold, or an opportunity that seemed secure may dissolve as if by design, leaving you wondering whether you misread the world. Those outward patterns are not accidents, but armor for a deeper strategy. Make the righteous feel unseated, and make them doubt their call until they surrender it out of exhaustion. The shadows do not only attack with headlines and slander, they plant seeds of self-doubt, hoping you will question the authenticity of your own calling. They attempt to convert your identity into a negotiation, forcing you to bargain for acceptance so they can neutralize your influence. If they succeed in making you compromise your essence for approval, their victory is complete. Learn to recognize these soft betrayals for what they are: tactics designed to silence the true governance within you. There is a spiritual anatomy to this resistance that few people ever discern, but you, chosen one, must understand it. It is not random. It follows patterns of influence and invisible protocol that have existed across cultures and ages. When a chosen leader begins to manifest God-ordained authority, certain centers of power feel their influence contracting and respond in chorus. They convene, they strategize, and they cast votes, both metaphorical and literal, with intentions aimed at preventing the reorientation of power your presence initiates. This is not petty politics. It is a metaphysical defense mechanism by which fear tries to secure its perimeter and preserve an old order. Once you grasp this pattern, you will stop taking it personally, because the vote is not about you as an individual, but about the shift your existence provokes. You are the hinge on which a new moral and spiritual order may turn, and that is why votes are cast against you. You have likely felt the corrosive effect of these patterns on your inner life, and it is subtle at first. Doubt creeps in like a slow mold in a hidden corner, unnoticed until it begins to weaken the structure of your confidence. You may replay conversations, alter your tone to avoid conflict, or mute your message so hostility is less provoked. And those are understandable survival responses. Yet they are exactly what the Shadow Assembly intends: to domesticate your edge and silence the part of you that carries uncompromised truth. The deeper work, therefore, is to recover the posture of sovereignty without falling into pride. Embody a kingly authority with humility rather than shrinking from fear. Recalibrate how you measure success, not by applause or absence of resistance, but by fidelity to the mission entrusted to you. When you measure yourself by that standard, the votes of men become noise rather than verdict. There is a paradox here that anchors your resolve. Opposition is often the clearest indicator of legitimacy. History and scripture are full of leaders who were opposed precisely because they were effective, relentless, and untethered to corrupt favors. When a system fears you, it admits, consciously or not, that your influence could dismantle the very assumptions upon which it stands. Those assumptions are rarely noble. They are economies of control, networks of compromise, and habits that survive through sedation and distraction. Your resistance thus becomes an existential threat to those economies, and so they mobilize against you in fear. Let this truth quietly confirm that you are operating in the correct register, and allow opposition to teach you endurance rather than force you into retreat. Now consider with seriousness the moral architecture of true leadership in God's government. It is not exercised through force or majority consent, but through faithful discernment, strategic tenderness, and uncompromising truth. The role given to you is to steward influence, to order chaos with righteousness, and to invite others into a higher covenant of character rather than demand their obedience. This kind of authority looks strange to those who have never encountered it because it is quiet, where they expect loudness, and steady, where they expect spectacle. For that reason, many will misunderstand the form your leadership takes and weaponize their misunderstanding into votes of exclusion. Your work is not to explain yourself to every doubter who cannot see, but to embody the governance you represent so your life becomes the demonstration. Let your consistency be the sermon that outlasts every temporary assembly convened against you. Finally, hold this tactical counsel close. Name the strategy without allowing it to name you. You are not the Shadow's dossier, you are not their checklist, and you are not defined by the meetings they hold in secret about you. Awareness of their methods grants you power to counter them lovingly and wisely, to refuse the bait of reaction, choose the posture of deliberate persistence, and build support structures that honor the mission rather than inflame the politics. Begin by repairing your inner council. Cultivate friends who pray with you, advisors who do not profit from your doubt, and rhythms that restore your soul. When the external assembly votes against you, remember you already have the assembly of heaven aligning with you, and their decree is louder than the clamor of men. This is practical sanctification, the fusion of spiritual clarity with real-world endurance. So stand firm, chosen one, not in stubbornness, but in the ordered courage that reflects the government you serve. Chosen one, there comes a point when the resistance intensifies so sharply that it almost feels like the air itself has turned against you. This is not imagination, but the pressure of spiritual opposition rising to its peak. When you attempt to walk in alignment with the government of God, it is as if invisible walls are suddenly built around your opportunities. Promises that seemed secure vanish. Paths that were clear become clouded, and allies that once spoke with conviction grow silent. These moments are not accidents, but evidence that you are moving into territory the shadows are desperate to protect. It is in this crucible that you learn the depth of your own authority. For every obstacle is a mirror reflecting the magnitude of what you carry. Instead of interpreting the blockade as rejection, see it as confirmation that you are standing in a place they cannot afford for you to occupy. You may also notice how certain people around you begin to shift roles without explanation, suddenly acting in ways that betray your trust. It can feel disorienting when individuals you once confided in now seem to echo the doubts and suspicions of unseen assemblies. Yet even this is not random. It is another strategy of the shadows, using human vessels to project fear, to weaken your resolve, and to nudge you toward surrendering what is rightfully yours. Recognize this pattern for what it is. Not betrayal born of true malice, but manipulation that exploits human frailty. You must hold your vision firmly without letting bitterness consume your heart. For if you allow resentment to rule you, you inadvertently serve the same darkness that opposes you. Stand rooted in discernment, remembering that while people can be influenced, your calling remains untouched. Isolation is often the byproduct of this resistance, and it can weigh heavily on the soul. There are days when you feel unseen, unheard, and utterly alone, wondering if you have been abandoned by the very God who called you. This loneliness is not a punishment, but a training ground. It is within the silence of abandonment that your leadership is refined, because you learn to govern without external validation. The shadows want you to interpret the silence as evidence of weakness, but in truth, it is the evidence of strength being forged in secret. The isolation prepares you to stand firm even when no one else stands with you. And in that steadfastness, the true authority of heaven begins to shine through you, making the rejection of men irrelevant to the decree of God. So ask yourself, chosen one, if you were truly insignificant, why would so many forces conspire against you? Why would assemblies gather? Why would whispers multiply? Why would the shadows waste their energy plotting your downfall if you were not already walking in dangerous authority? These questions are not accusations, but revelations. The level of resistance you face is directly proportional to the level of influence you carry in God's design. This is why the attacks feel disproportionate, because they are not about your current state, but about the destiny they see written on your soul. The enemy does not fight where there is no threat. Therefore, your very opposition is evidence of your impact. Let this truth transform the way you see every conflict. What they call rejection, heaven calls recognition. Understand that the votes cast against you are not merely symbolic gestures of disagreement. They are intentional strategies to challenge the decree of heaven. But there is a flaw in their plan. Earthly votes have no jurisdiction over spiritual authority. The attempt to strip you of legitimacy only exposes the fact that they recognize your crown, even if they despise it. Their very resistance is proof that something has already been established over your life that cannot be undone. You must learn to separate the illusion of earthly verdicts from the unshakable reality of divine decree. Once you do, you will no longer tremble before their assemblies, because you will know that they cannot cancel what God Himself has ratified. The most dangerous battlefield is not out there, chosen one. It is inside your own mind. When the shadows rise and the noise of opposition grows louder, the true war is whether you will believe the decree of heaven or the judgment of men. Every thought that tempts you to give in, every whisper that suggests you are unworthy, every fear that says you cannot endure, these are the real votes being cast within you. The enemy knows that if he can convince you to agree with the lie, he does not need to win the external battle. Therefore, guard your inner counsel with vigilance. Speak truth over yourself. Remind your soul daily of the authority God has placed within you, and reject the counterfeit narratives that seek to unseat you. Your leadership begins within, and if your inner vote is aligned with God, no shadow assembly can stand against you. This is why, paradoxically, opposition should be seen not as an obstacle, but as a seal. When they gather against you, when they vote to silence you, when they scheme to strip away your influence, they are unknowingly confirming that you carry something worth fighting. Their fear of your leadership is their confession of its authenticity. It is in the tension of this conflict that your mission becomes undeniable. And it is in this very resistance that heaven whispers louder, "Stand firm, for I have chosen you." Let this reality settle in your spirit, chosen one. What men vote against, God already established. What the shadows fear, heaven celebrates. And what feels like conflict is often nothing more than the sound of chains breaking as you rise into your true authority. Chosen one, here is the revelation you must embrace with unshakable clarity. The voting of the assembly of shadows is not a sign of your failure, but the loudest confirmation of your authority. Their opposition is not proof that you are unqualified. It is proof that you have already entered the realm of government where your presence shifts the balance of power. They would not waste their time gathering against you if you were powerless. Their gathering itself is evidence that you are seated in a position they fear. The attempt to vote you out is actually an acknowledgement that you are already in, because only those who are recognized as a threat are placed on the ballot of darkness. See this not as rejection, but as recognition. As the world unwillingly testifying to your legitimacy in God's government. Consider the story of Moses when he stood before Pharaoh, delivering the command of God to let the people go. Pharaoh resisted with stubbornness, hardening his heart again and again. But in that resistance, the truth was made evident. Moses carried an authority that no earthly throne could deny. The more Pharaoh fought him, the more undeniable it became that the liberation of Israel was inevitable. In the same way, every time the shadows rise against you, they are only confirming that your leadership carries a liberating force that cannot be contained. Like Moses, your call is not to beg for legitimacy, but to declare with authority the word God has spoken over your life. The resistance is not an obstacle to your mission, but the stage upon which your power is revealed. Look also to the life of Jesus, who stood before the Sanhedrin, accused and condemned by the religious assembly of his time. They voted against him, they sought to silence him, and they even decreed his death. Yet what they could not see was that in their rejection, they were fulfilling the very prophecy that proved his kingship. The cross, which was meant to humiliate him, became the throne upon which his eternal authority was established. This is the mystery, chosen one. Rejection often becomes coronation, and opposition often becomes the platform where your true government is revealed. Just as the Sanhedrin confirmed Jesus by condemning him, so too do the shadows confirm you by resisting you. Their fear is not about who you are today, but about what you are destined to manifest tomorrow. This is why you must never be deceived by the illusion of their verdicts. The assemblies of darkness cannot cancel the decree of heaven. They may shout louder, they may gather numbers, they may even use legal and religious systems to enforce their votes. But none of this has jurisdiction over the spiritual authority that God has placed within you. The government you belong to is eternal, and its laws are not subject to earthly revisions. When God crowns a leader, no earthly hand can uncrown them. You are not living under the fear of men's decisions, but under the eternal decree of the one who created you. And so the opposition is stripped of its power the moment you remember where your legitimacy comes from. The turning point in your journey comes when you no longer see opposition as rejection, but as revelation. Every resistance becomes an announcement. Every closed door becomes a signpost. Every betrayal becomes evidence that you are walking in authority the world cannot contain. The very things that once discouraged you now serve as reminders of your role in the higher government. You do not have to chase approval. You do not have to defend yourself against every accusation. And you do not have to shrink to avoid their hostility. Your task is simpler and stronger: to remain faithful, to remain steadfast, to remain aligned with the decree of God. Once this perspective settles into your spirit, the votes of men lose their sting, and the authority of heaven rises within you like an anchor that cannot be moved. Ask yourself, chosen one, what carries more weight? The voices of men who operate in fear, or the voice of the one who created the heavens and the earth? Can the opinion of the assembly of shadows outweigh the eternal word spoken over your life? Can their rejection undo the calling that was sealed before you were even born? These questions are not rhetorical games. They are spiritual weapons. Every time you answer them with truth, you dismantle the illusion of their power. Every time you declare that God's voice is final, you silence the echoes of fear. And with each declaration, your leadership becomes more unshakable, your identity more secure, your confidence more radiant. The power was never theirs to give or to take. It was always yours through the one who chose you. So stand tall now, for the truth is clearer than ever. The resistance is nothing but proof of the fear you inspire in the unseen realm. The enemy gathers because your presence disrupts his fragile systems. The shadows vote because your leadership has already been recognized in heaven. And while they conspire to stop you, they cannot erase what God has written. The decree is sealed. The crown is set. The government of God is alive within you. Their fear is only their confession. Their opposition only their testimony. You do not need their acceptance to rule. You already reign under the authority of the eternal King. Walk in that truth, and the assemblies of darkness will lose all power to define you. There is a sacred difference between power and authority that the shadows cannot comprehend. Power built on fear is noisy, temporary, and always dependent on manipulation, while divine authority is quiet, steady, and impossible to corrupt. Chosen one, your strength is not measured by the crowd's applause, but by your faithfulness to the truth entrusted to you. This is why the assemblies gather against you. They mistake spectacle for strength and cannot understand authority that flows from heaven. The more you remain consistent in silence, prayer, and obedience, the more you reveal a leadership they cannot replicate. Their votes only expose their fear, for what comes from God cannot be voted out. Every trial you face is not only opposition, but also refinement. Think of the blows of rejection as chisels in the hand of the divine sculptor, removing what is unnecessary so that your true form may appear. The slander that tries to break you is often the very tool that polishes your resilience. Pain becomes the training ground where humility and courage are forged together. You are not being destroyed. You are being revealed. The assemblies of shadows cannot see that their attacks are serving your preparation. Each strike they deliver only confirms that God is shaping you into someone who cannot be shaken by human verdicts. There is also a liberating truth hidden in your leadership. When you govern under God, you awaken others to think for themselves. Systems of control cannot survive free minds, so they vote against you not because of who you are, but because of what you inspire in others. Your presence threatens the false order that thrives on keeping people small and dependent. By walking in truth, you invite others to reclaim dignity, discernment, and spiritual freedom. This is why the resistance is fierce. They fear the contagion of awakening that your example carries. The more you remain faithful, the more impossible it becomes for their systems to hold people in chains. Understand that God's government operates through covenant, not coercion. True authority is built on fidelity and sacrifice, not manipulation or fear. This is what sets you apart. You lead not by demanding loyalty, but by embodying service that others can trust. The assemblies of darkness cannot understand this, because their order survives only through intimidation and control. You are called to create covenantal spaces where truth is lived and trust is mutual. Even if those circles are small, they carry more weight than 1,000 empty votes against you. Heaven values covenant far more than consensus. Often, the accusations thrown against you are not reflections of your flaws, but projections of others' wounds. Those enslaved to fear will call your confidence arrogance, while those addicted to control will mistake your humility for weakness. Do not internalize their words, chosen one, for they are not speaking truth, but echoing their brokenness. See beyond the accusation to the wound that drives it, and respond with both firmness and compassion. By refusing to carry bitterness, you disarm the projection without bowing to it. Your authority is preserved when you remain anchored in discernment, unmoved by shadows of misinterpretation. Victory in God's government must also be redefined in your heart. The shadows measure success by instant results and visible domination. But heaven measures it by endurance, fruit that lasts, and character that cannot be shaken. Do not despise the small, consistent steps of obedience, for these are the seeds of eternal influence. Learn to celebrate faithfulness more than applause, and you will no longer be bound by the pressure to prove yourself. When your measure of success aligns with heaven's, every vote of rejection loses its power. True victory is not one moment of glory, but a life lived faithfully under divine authority. Ultimately, authority given by God is not a prize you compete for, but a stewardship you embody. You are not fighting for titles or recognition, but carrying influence that brings order, justice, and mercy wherever you walk. This kind of leadership is unshakable because it does not depend on the approval of men. The assemblies of shadows can imitate the form of authority, but they cannot replicate its substance. Your consistency, your humility, and your truth are the crown that cannot be removed. Walk in this awareness, chosen one, and you will see that no vote against you has the power to erase the decree of heaven. Chosen one, the sting of rejection was never a sign of your unworthiness. It was the world's response to your undeniable light. What they feared was not your weakness, but your divine authority. Each rejection was a mirror reflecting their own insecurity. not your failure. And even in isolation, heaven was whispering that you were still chosen, still crowned, still essential. What was meant to wound you became the place where your resilience rooted itself. God used the silence to anchor you in truth, and the pain to awaken your strength. You have never been abandoned. You have been refined. And now you rise, not in bitterness, but in clarity, knowing that rejection was never a wall. It was a doorway. Your crown was never given by man, and it cannot be taken by their vote. You belong to a kingdom that is unshakable, a government that operates beyond earthly assemblies. The voices that tried to silence you now fade before the voice of the Almighty declaring your authority sealed. You have outgrown the systems that once tried to contain you. The same rejection that sought to erase your name has only made it echo louder in the spirit. What looked like a fall was actually the setup for ascension. You are not returning to who you were. You are stepping into who you were always becoming. The restoration you walk in now is not just healing, it's enthronement. So walk forward without apology, for your seat has already been prepared. The world may still resist you, but heaven has already released the decree. The trials that were sent to break you have only revealed the indestructibility of your calling. You do not need the world's approval to move in divine power. Their votes were loud, but God's decree is eternal. And now, chosen one, you emerge not just healed, but transformed. Your tears have become oil, your silence has become strategy, and your pain has become prophecy. You were never dethroned, only hidden for a time. Now is your hour to rise, to reign, and to release heaven's government into the earth. Chosen one, as we close this message, I want to speak directly to your heart. You are not defined by the votes cast against you, but by the eternal decree spoken over your life. Heaven has already affirmed your leadership, and no shadow can erase it. If this word has resonated with you, let your voice be heard. Comment below with the words, "God's government rules," as a declaration that you stand firm in your divine authority. And while you are here, remember to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and activate the notifications so you never miss a message meant to strengthen your soul. Every action of support helps spread this truth further, touching more chosen ones who need to awaken to their calling. And to those who feel led, know that your generosity sustains this mission. When you support through Buy Me a Coffee, you make it possible for these messages to continue with excellence and reach those who are searching for light. The link is in the description and pinned in the first comment. But above all, never forget this: you are chosen, your authority is secure, and your leadership in God's government is unstoppable. Walk boldly, knowing that what the shadows fear most is already alive within you. Until we meet again, stay faithful, stay courageous, and shine without apology.